World, what's going on? It's your man DA. In this video, I want to tell you about one of the keys that I've discovered to really shifting life out of struggle and survival mode into a more creative, thriving way of being. Because in the conversations I have with people literally all around the world, one of the common themes that I run into is this idea of being limited by circumstances. So many of us feel as though we can't do because things are the way they are around us. And whenever we feed into that, right, we allow our thoughts to kind of run away with us. Whenever we do that, it's not the circumstances that are limiting us. It's ourselves. We limit our ability to move about the world because of what we think about the circumstances and the situations. We think because our job will only pay us this amount per hour that we can't go out and apply for a job 3 times that amount. We think that because we have, so many number of kids that our time is limited to only working, being home, being out with the family or whatever. But the truth of the matter is that no outside circumstance, no outside situation, when I say outside, I mean outside of yourself, right? There's no circumstance, there is no situation that is bigger than you are. But the problem is we're so engrossed in this life, right? Because if you think about life as a game, you're player one. And the world you live in, that's the level you're on. And in order to progress, you have to defeat enemies, you got to defeat the bosses, you have to level up your skills. But it's as if we're playing the game of life on all Madden mode, right? Things just seem hard, they seem tough, they seem super difficult, so much and so to the point that no matter what we attempt to do, the computer is always dominating us. But the cheat code to turning the tables, turning the tide, shifting the level of difficulty in the game lies in your level of peace. Don't let that go over your head, right? Your level of peace determines the level of difficulty that you're going to experience in the game of life. I know this because throughout some of the most difficult circumstances in my own life, multiple times I've had multiple people completely unrelated, don't know each other, didn't know we had the conversations. I've had multiple people tell me, like when they hear me express what was happening and how I was looking at things and how I was still moving through it, they all said to me, it's like, yo, that's crazy, but I can hear the peace in your voice. So I know you're gonna be okay. I know you're good. And I would stand back and say, wow, that's dope, right? That's amazing, and thank you. Right, thank you for acknowledging the peace that's there, because it serves as a reminder for me that, okay, I'm on the right path. Although in the moment, I'll tell y'all firsthand, it feels crazy, right? It feels like literally outside of your mind crazy, because when life is literally on its head, but you're as cool as a cucumber, right? You're chilling like, a pea in a pod. Like you got no worries. It feels like you should be worrying, right? Light bill is due, cell phone is due, rent is due. Don't know how you're gonna put food on the table. You chilling. But how are we able to do that, right? How have I been able to do that? I'm reminded of a couple of passages from the Bible, right? The first one is when the disciples were on the boat. They were out on the Sea of Galilee. Jesus was asleep in the bottom of the boat, and there was a storm happening. The disciples on top of the boat wigging out like, oh my gosh, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. They're like, Jesus, wake up, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. Jesus wakes up, I imagine maybe slightly flustered. He was like, all right. Like, oh, you of little faith, right? And then proceeds to rebuke the wind, calms the waves, says, peace, be still. And immediately everything calmed down. And the disciples stood back shocked and amazed. It was like, whoa, who's this dude, right? They've been walking with him for some time now, and I was like, yo, who's this guy that even the wind and the waves obey him, right? And then the other passage, and it's the one that I think one of the ones I've latched onto throughout what we would consider difficult times, is the verse that says, "You will keep him in perfect peace who keeps his mind stayed on you." Now, that verse doesn't mean that we just sit around and think about God all day. I mean, it could, right? Depending on your perspective of the infinite, that it could work, right? But what I've come to understand that verse to mean is that when you shift your thinking out of concern for the future or out of anxiety of the past or whatever, and you get to this present moment, when you're constantly and perpetually focused on the now, when you keep your mind on the now, that's when there's perfect peace. Because right now in this moment, you're watching this video, what is wrong in your life? Right? I'm not talking about the things you have to do. I'm not talking about your concerns or worries. I'm not talking about whatever health situations you may have going on right now. In this present moment, is there a problem? I would venture that there's not, right? If you're jumping out of an airplane with the parachute attached to your back, you go to pull the eject button on a parachute so it comes out. If that parachute doesn't go, you don't have a problem. The only problem there would be is if you're focused on, oh my gosh, in a minute, I'm going to hit the ground, right? That's taking your mind to the future. But if you're in the moment, just falling out of a plane, I think it was Byron Katie who said this. She was like, jumping out of a plane without a parachute isn't something to worry about. It's just a nice ride down, and that's what you get to experience when you're in the present moment. Again, it seems crazy, but you have to shift how you view it. You have to shift your perspective around what you give your concern to. And so the primary key that I would want you to walk away from this with is that when you keep your mind focused on the present moment, when you're always intentional about getting your concern back to now, that's where you'll find the most peace. That's where you're going to find that, okay, I can do this. I may not see how, but there's something I can do in this moment to move the needle forward, just maybe 0.5%, 1%, right? You don't need to solve the entire problem today. Whatever it is, whatever situation has been weighing heavily on your mind, I want you to try an experiment, right? Because our lives are laboratories. Take a concern or an issue that you've been perseverating over for days, weeks, months, maybe even years, right? I want you to let it go. I want you to find the strength, because that's what it takes. It takes strength, it takes courage to feel like you don't have to worry. I want you to take your worry and concern and just put it aside for a day and rest in the now moment. And what I mean by that is whatever your hand finds to do today, just do that. Because the mind that's ripping and running, constantly looking for solutions, won't find one. Yes, you might, discover a breakthrough, but 9 times out of 10, right? Even some of the greatest scientific discoveries weren't discovered when somebody was perseverating over the question. It was usually once they stepped back, when they took a break from it. Maybe they were out for a walk, maybe they were in the bath or in the shower. But it came to them when their mind was occupied with something else. And so there is a mechanism at work in the world that we live in. There's like 7 hawks flying over my apartment building right now. It's crazy. There's a mechanism at work in our life that when we release concern, it kicks in. And what I believe that to be is simply the ordinary movement of life. Because all of life is taking care of itself. And our life individually is operating in tandem and at the same time with the greater movement of the entire universe. So on the one hand, we're creating our realities through our thoughts, through our actions, through our feelings, through our emotions. And we're subject to the movement and the laws of the world that we occupy. So yeah, on one hand, we're creating our reality. On the other hand, we're subject to a greater reality. But those truths are not at odds. It's actually the way things are. And so the sooner we can come to grips with this fact that there are powers and there is a force at work here in the universe, and it operates in and through us. When we recognize that, we can look at any situation in our life and recognize that we're not lost, that we're not defeated, that it's not over for us, that there is a way through, that we can make it, and that there is nothing in this universe bigger than us. Because you and I are individual expressions of an infinite consciousness on a cosmic journey experiencing itself. Like it's true that we are all individualized expressions of an infinite source. And that source has our best intentions in mind. And when you let go of the concern and the worry, which is basically saying, I don't need you, God, I can fix this myself. That's what we say when we worry, when we're overly concerned with how we're going to make it through. All the Spirit asks is that we give it the what, right? Clarify the vision in our mind. What is it that we are looking for? Not what it is you don't want. Because recognize, you're sitting here thinking about what you don't want. What have you continued to have in your life? Does it make sense yet? So shift that thinking from what you don't want to what you do want, and then begin to move towards it. And the most powerful way to move toward that is in a state of peace. Not worrying about the past and not fearing the future. Not sitting in anxiety and depression of the past and not letting the anxiousness and the concerns of the future overwhelm you. Jesus even said that in Matthew 6. He said, take no thought for your life. Don't worry about what you're going to eat. Don't worry about what you're going to drink. And don't worry about what you're going to put on. For these are all things that the Gentiles seek after. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things will be added to you. It's so clear what he was talking about. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, drink, or put on. That's talking about worries of the future, right? It's hard for us, but we can do it. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have told us to do it, right? So if you want to talk about, commandments from the master, how about that one, right? Love your neighbor, right? Everybody harps on that one. Love your neighbor. Don't judge unless you want to be judged. How about take no thought for your life? Let that be your challenge today.